Hello, hello, and welcome everyone. Quick intro, and we're going to get straight into it. So, for everyone new, this is a LinkedIn Live setup. So, if you've ever been on Twitch, there's chat. We're going to be engaging with the chat and have a very active workshop. So, first of all, what are you looking at? So, hi, I'm Harry, host of the Gaming Playbook, essentially resources and interviews for gaming professionals. And today I'm joined by Alexander Brazie. I'll quickly give you guys the lowdown. So, 20 plus years in game design. Designed many of the bosses of World of Warcraft during the glory days, worked at Riot for League of Legends and Moon Studios, Ori and the Will of the Wisps. He's also built and mentored design teams for like 10 plus years, and he's helped ship over 32 projects now. And I thought he'd be very relevant for today's conversation, which is how to get promoted in games fast, and also how to get your first job in games. So the reason being, Alexander Brazie is actually the co-founder of Game Design Skills, which has mentored probably thousands of people now, maybe hundreds, like kind of in a intimate setting. And we're going to be looking at what actually it takes to get promoted in games. No woo-woo stuff, just like was actually working over the last couple of years. So intro done. Alexander, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Hey, doing pretty good today. It's a nice, a little cloudy day in Los Angeles, which is a nice change of pace. I actually just got back from a trip to France, which was phenomenal. Went to Champcenot and Bordeaux and a bunch of other places out there. Had a phenomenal time seeing these really old chateaus, like these old castle-like homes that have been built, many, many years ago. And it was beautiful and fun.
Alrighty, so we'll get straight into it. So I want to first start for people who are new. So Alex, how did you get your first job in games? And I want to talk about kind of the actions you did, and also kind of, because I know the story quite well, and it's really good the way it kind of came to be, and I think it parallels with a few things that can be done. So, like, how did you first get started in games?
Oh my goodness. So obviously, the learning the little bit of coding part, because back when I started, you literally had these 3, 2, 1 contact books. So you'd fall right out the code of it into QBasic and things like that. So that my dad left one of those lying around home, and I got started there. But when I was 12, I was going online because we'd been one of those people being trying out this new thing called the internet. Back then it was called GopherNet when we started at 11. It was internet by the time I had hit 12. And I went online. I found this one little online French video game. It was called Growl Online by Cyberjour. And I thought the game was really cool. They basically stole all the pixels from Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past and then painted a little environment with it. And I'm like, well, wouldn't it be cool if there was more interesting stuff in there? So I started making different sprites, different heads, like literally retexturing things, jumped into the level editor, started doing some level editing and modding. And then eventually, their creator noticed it. And he was like, do you want to come and do this with us on a volunteer basis? I'm like, sure. And he's like, great. How old are you? And me being 13-year-olds at the time, I'm like, parents said, never let anyone know how old you are on the internet. So I said, I'm 23, but I'll be 24 very soon, because that's a big milestone. Anyways, like, great. All right, you finished college then. Yeah, you're not going to scrub, come and join us. And I spent the next 3 years volunteering with this team, building levels and environments, and actually at some point was managing the team, figuring out what creatively we're going to be doing, where it was in the world, and everything kind of snowballed from there. Now, back in these days, there wasn't video, there wasn't audio communications. It just didn't exist. That technology physically wasn't there for most people. So I was in basically an IRC chat room chatting with these folks as we edited custom assets. And that was it for 3 years. And then that project was shut down because 3 years of a bunch of teenagers running around trying to make things actually isn't very organized or very effective, at least back then. So we'd spent 3 years and hadn't really delivered anything, and the person who owned the company came in to the programmer and shut us down. And I was actually kind of crushed by this, right? Because, when you're coming through an experience like that and you think you've lost your only chance, right? But it was very much not true. But I took myself out of the game and went into traditional programming, went to college, ended up going and we're modding a game called World of Warcraft, a bunch of steps in between, but so be it. And then that led to me actually getting an interview at Microsoft, where I went up to Redmond, spent a couple months working there, actually had dinner with Bill and Melinda Gates, because in that period of time, well, that's a different story entirely. But yeah, that was one of the things that could actually happen that time, but had dinner with them at their house and came back. And it's like, oh, wow, that was a peak life experience, and I'm unhappy. Something needs to be examined here. And so I actually flew down to go see my friend Luke here in San Clemente, who actually I just saw 3 days ago, which is kind of wonderful. He's still there for more, even 25 years later. And ended up meeting the people who ended up leading to me getting onto the World of Warcraft team. Had lunch with them, talked about game design. I asked them, like, what does a game designer do? At the end of it, they're like, your answers are actually fantastic. Do you want to just work with us next week? I'm like, sure. And thus I ended up getting thrown into World of Warcraft, even though I've hated MMOs my whole life. So funny how life can take you down those routes.
Very cool. And I want to double click on a few things there, because one could say right place, right time, but you did a lot of things there to be able to capitalize on those moments. Like you were programming, and then you continued to work on that game. And also you were modding WoW because you wanted to build something. So we're going to get into today kind of what we can do tactically to like get promoted and kind of also find ourselves more in the right places, I guess. I don't know how else to put it. So I want to kick us off with the first question. In game design skills, for everyone at home, like they're mentoring people actively right now who are either getting their first job or getting their next job. So what do you see in the best students that you do not see in, for example, I guess the rest of the games industry? Like what are they getting right 100%? Let's just answer that big question.
Sure. So first off, what do I see in our best students is obviously the initiative to sign up for things, the risk taking to try things, even if they aren't 100% sure if it's going to work. The initiative to basically decide to act on things, to basically start saying, hey, I'm going to push forward and be proactive about it. I'm going to ask for these things. I'm going to try to do these things. And the last one, the one that we probably mentor them the most on, is understanding and utilizing frameworks, right? One of the things that's about kind of game design is very much seen and was completely seen when I started. If you actually go back to my very first blog, it was called Opening the Black Box of Game Design, right? It has a far more cleaned up name now. But the whole idea was that this was an unknown, a mysterious skill that only a few people could ever have. But as I was working through it, I was mentored through it, as I worked through these really talented people, I realized there was a consistency in the process. And as it turns out, it's mental frameworks. Do you understand how to get inside the mind of the player? Do you understand how to break things down and reassemble them? Do you understand how to pull things into a shape that all of a sudden you can reuse things from another game without copy pasting them exactly as they are? Do you understand the patterns that transcend games? And can you connect those to player emotions? And ultimately, that's what we teach. First principles of game design, or we're now branding to First Principles of Fun, is all about getting inside the player's head. Well, mastering. Oh, excuse me, I'm getting thirsty already.
I'm actually going to turn on the AC before I melt, but please continue.
Sounds good. Well, mastering game mechanics and game polish and feel is all about basically how do I improve the quality of my games? How do I make games that can scale and add more content, as well as, hey, how can I make the impact of those moments more significant? I could probably go on a long spiel here while he's getting the AC on. But when you look at students, right, there's some folks who show up and they're just there to sit and soak. And that can be fine. But the ones who really succeed are the ones who engage, they collaborate with others. We had one group of students actually collaborate so effectively together. They went and formed their own studios. Now, Cave Bear Studios, run by Ayla Derrick, has now taken off. She has as many, if not more, followers on LinkedIn than I do at this point. And they've already shipped their first game. This is less than 2 years ago, right, when we ran our very first set of classes. And just, I think finding that level of alignment with people around you who want to do the same things that you do and will deliver is life-changing.
Yeah, I want to really highlight that because these are alumni, right, from Game Design Skills.
That's right. I think They picked up a couple people after us, but that's where they started.
Fantastic. Because I've been kind of following from the sidelines, I guess. So yeah, Ayla was the lady you were referring to. And yeah, it's been just really cool to see. Like they just gone and did it, right? No permission needed. So I want to touch on that. When people ask me at conferences, and I had this conversation happen to me before, this was at Gamescom last year. He said, this person was in art. They had game jobs for most of their career. Then they suddenly couldn't find work. And they were just really struggling to like get that attention. So just for everyone listening here who are out of work right now and they want to get the first job, what would you say to that person in terms of how do you get that first opportunity? And for a lot of these people, they actually don't have interviews, let alone like how do we succeed at the interview? So let's just start before then. So first principles of getting these conversations with people who could hire you. So what are we looking at?
Well, first off, you need to have done the work beforehand, right? I've always loved the phrase, luck just means where opportunity met preparation, right? And so we can talk about the two sides there. The preparation is doing things like leveling up, training yourself, being aware of the industry, being aware of what games are coming out, having played a lot of games so you can have conversations about recent releases or even older releases. With the opportunity part, you have to basically be able to identify and be just kind of friendly and warm and interested in people and what they are looking for. You're generally not going to succeed in life if you are solely interested in your own self-interest. You'll also not succeed in life if you are completely devoid of self-interest, right? One must have a balance. If you are only looking out for yourself, then you're not going to support others. You're not going to help them get the opportunities that will lead to them being in a situation where they can help you out. If you are completely devoid of self-interest, then you will not step up and take chances and offer yourself up when it's an opportunity for you to succeed. So when you're going through a conference and interacting with people, ask them what they're interested in, connect them with others. Try to keep a little checklist in your mind of like, oh, I met so-and-so and they're looking for X. For a long time, and it's fallen out of use, I kept a giant Excel sheet and it had a list of all the people I knew as either friends or usually my friend acquaintances, what they're currently doing in life, what they wanted to do in life, and one hobby. And then ideally their birthday. And when their birthday rolls around, send them an article to something that they're interested in or things like that. You need to have that same kind of mindset with people you meet in business. Who are the people you're meeting? What kind of designers are you looking for? What kind of art are you looking for? What kind of resources? People will not forget if you hook them up, right? And help them find others, just period. And when you know that, and you also have to know, oh, hey, this company is looking for combat designers, systems designers, whatever. You can also begin shaping yourself to level up in those skills. Or if you're, by the way, this is identical to how you do it inside organizations, right? You want to move up, you want to advance around. What does the organization need? What skills have you developed? Have you stepped up to make things easier on the people managing you or the production team working with you? The people who get paid the most aren't just the people who have some rare skill or magical insight or we're the boss's friend, even though that absolutely happens. It's usually the people who basically deliver things, don't require constant attention, and can basically identify the opportunities and needs of the organization, understand the system and the people inside, and figure out how to work within it, as well as grow and change it in a way to shape it and make it more effective, such that the people at the top need to manage less.
You mentioned being friends of the boss definitely happens, and that gets the job. But you also mentioned how to basically become that friend. Because I think the bar to be a friend of someone isn't actually quite high. Like, someone said this a while ago, like, there's a reason kind of nepotism exists in hiring and in the games industry even more, because it's very creative. It's because if someone else has vetted that person in some way and you're looking for a new person and you ask internally, who do we know? Then that person comes recommended. Why wouldn't you interview that person? So if that's actually happening, how do we put ourselves in those shoes? Then you mentioned exactly how to do it. Even as someone with, quote unquote, like next to no work experience, I've seen it happen at conferences, and this is how I run like my business. When I go to a conference, every question, I don't really care until I get my answer to the first one. It's like, why are you here? And like, what drives you? Because once you know that, then I'm like, you want to come here to meet with someone who can lend you money. I met that person 2 hours ago. Let me introduce you. And then best believe I have a relationship manager because I'm in biz dev, but like what you mentioned before with the spreadsheet, it's also a relationship manager. And when you have more time, you have the luxury that someone like me doesn't have, where you can be quite meticulous with this stuff. Like, this doesn't cost you anything to get a Google sheet going where you track all these things, and you don't need 1,000 conversations to get your first job. You might need 100, but then like if you can get a conversation every couple of days, it starts to quickly add up. So at least when I see, like in my network, when I hear people are getting jobs, it's usually the people who have the biggest fishnet out. And it's no one unique thing. They might have been to a conference, right place, right time, sure. But then they decided to obviously go to that conference. And there are free versions and there are more expensive versions. So just to kind of highlight that. Yes,
yeah, I mean,
people hire friends.
the question, why does nepotism exist, right? And there is some degree of corruption in there, but I think there's also a significant degree of, hey, this is a person who is already value aligned. I'm risk averse. I don't want to hire someone who might, self-destruct or cause problems, right? Or at least there are social consequences for doing so, right? And so I think there's a little bit of that fear averseness as well. But there's also the fact that by nature, we are tribal beings. And so we tend to trust those who basically are recommended by other people we trust, right? Now, again, that can lead to lots and lots of problems. You still need to critically evaluate. If you don't go through the process of grabbing a bunch of strangers and comparing them to the person you've been recommended against, you won't be really confident or sure that this person is really good, or if they're actually effective for your organization, right? And so, yeah, I think that a lot of people get hung up on that because that happens. But the simple truth is that, I've hired many people that I've barely known because they showcased. They had the skills, they had the mindset, and they had the drive and opportunity such that they weren't going to get pulled away immediately on whatever project I give them. Because that's where it tends to be. I lose most folks that are new. I bring them in, try out something else distracts them, they get excited. And there are plenty of people in my life that I know who live like that. I love the life for them. But when you're working for someone, you want someone who's going to basically figure out the mission plan, interact with the team members they need to interact with, get the job done, and keep you reported and let you know when problems are coming. And I think that last one is another one that a lot of people undervalue. You don't want someone who says, everything's fine, and it blows up. Or even everything's fine and it gets worked. You want to be like, all right, listen, hey, we're having a struggle with this thing. I'm taking this step and this step to resolve it. Then you have as a lead, you have the opportunity to say, oh, have you considered this third step? Actually, we did, and we decided not to go that way for this direction. And then, you are actually more trusted because you report problems in a way that doesn't sap leadership, right? And those are the most effective people who rise the quickest within the ranks, because not only do they have the understanding, we can talk a whole lot about game design structures and things like that, but ultimately it's about alleviating the pressure and the anxiety of ownership and leadership.
Right, it was really resonating with my experience as a recruiter. I was scrolling Instagram today, and there's a lady called Layla Hormozi. She runs acquisition.com, and she had a short where she describes you want to only give equity to someone who's a barrel. And she describes a barrel employee as like someone who takes ownership and who can carry the business on their back. So like you give them resources and then they just go and build shit. And when you kind of break it down, all they mean is can do stuff without having to, like you said, sap ownership. Sorry, it's kind of management time, headspace. Yeah. And what you're saying is like, you're being very proactive. Like if someone's in my team and is proactively saying, oh, by the way, this is coming up, I've done this, just letting you know. And it's not part of like the bare minimum versus the 9 others who didn't do that. Who am I going to promote? Who am I going to keep an eye out for? Like very real example for me. Yeah, go on, Alex.
I've absolutely made that mistake where I gave ownership to someone who was mentally and physically not ready to take leadership and just sat there, tell me what to do. And it was just a constant drain. Now that's fine on a small design team where I am the lead of like 3 people and my job is to tell people what to do and shape the content, right? But now that I'm working on what is now 4 businesses right now, I have my consultancy, I have game design skills, I've got a AI-based company that I don't own, but I basically invest in and basically provide support to. Another one that's basically a travel and entertainment industry thing. And when you're splitting your time across many things over a lot of your life, all of a sudden the amount of time and energy you have to pour into leveling up a specific person or a specific thing is a huge drain, right? And that's not to say that this is a bad thing, but it just, as you try to do more things, if you're giving equity to someone, that basically is saying that you believe that they have the ability to guide the vision of the product in a way that deserves that sort of, valuation. And when you don't do that, they just think that person, when they don't have that skill set and that mindset, becomes a person who thinks they are basically a puppet, right? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Because they don't want to lose that, as opposed to how do I get the most out of that? And that's a very different mindset.
1000%. And I feel like sometimes by having that mindset, you might ruffle feathers. Like there is a quote unquote,
you have to ruffle feathers.
Exactly. Yeah. Like if you only do, because I'm sure there are some companies, like I'm guessing like bigger game companies, like it's always been this way type mindset might be the case. And if you were to do something that is objectively more efficient, but is therefore different, difference has a cost, right? But if you kept pushing through and said, look, this is why this is better for the business, and you're the only one doing that, there is, I wouldn't say the word danger, but like there might be pushback. But if you don't do that, then like I think, like we mentioned, like there's not going to be that kind of level up, at least not at the speed that you'd want it.
Yeah, I mean, at World of Warcraft, I was very, very technically capable. I was, I had my issues. Generally, I'd push the bar, probably harder than most people are comfortable with at Blizzard. But that didn't lead to me getting promoted, right? Because at Blizzard, I was a very effective implementer and I showcased tons of effective implementation skills. I could, redesign entire classes in, handfuls of weeks or specializations and so on, right? Which was immense technical skill, but that's not what levels people up. It's organizational skill, right? Because yes, it's great. Even if you can do 3x, 5x. I know on one recent team, I was probably like 10x for a while, the other implementers who weren't familiar with the technology. But again, when it comes to organizations, about getting alignment, getting people working together. Do you understand the organization and who needs to be poked and to what degree and how often, and how can you be hands off versus hands on, right? Because there's a time, you have a very junior person, work with them in a detail way, but there are times people need time and space to breathe and work on things and learn the toolkit themselves. And balancing that line is very important, especially you're getting from junior to mid. I think, skill and awareness of the organization is enough. But as you go to senior, it then is about complete and significant understanding of the organization. And then leadership is now about how to help others gain that understanding of the organization capabilities.
Let's talk about it a bit more. So let's say you're that you feel like you're that 3x, maybe even 10x implementer. Yep. And you want to get further in your career. Let's say you have two options, right? Join another company or get promoted in the same company. So let's say promoted in the same company. Why did you want to get promoted at Blizzard? Was that something you were consciously thinking about?
Oh, of course. One of my goals was to hit, to remove the associate and get to just game designer at Blizzard.
And you're saying, what was sorry to interrupt, just like associate to like game designer, what was missing?
Yeah, I think that associate to game designer was a couple of things. One, I didn't really understand my own worth was a significant piece of it. So I didn't ask soon enough. And then second was really organizational friction, right? Actually, there's this wonderful little saying. It came from Wyatt Sheng, who was a game designer on Diablo 2, Diablo 3, as well as doing a bunch of stuff with me on World of Warcraft. And what he came in, he explained it, and it kind of put the light bulb on in my head. He's like, Alex, when you're an associate or a junior's like, right, they're both pretty low ranks. You have a weapon, but that weapon is a water pistol. You can load it up as many times as you want. You can run around and say, change this, and squirt that gun in everyone's faces. It kind of annoys them. They don't take it too seriously, but you can refill that and take as many shots as you want, and no one really feels bad about it, right? But when you move up to, when you want to move up to senior, you've now got a 6-shooter. You got a revolver. It's got 6 bullets in it. They're really powerful and you can get things killed and get things done. But after you fire those bullets, you're done, right? And then he goes, and you would only think, okay, great. Well, when you move up, you now have a machine gun as a lead. He's like, no, when you're now the director of a project, you now have a sniper rifle. Every shot you take is utterly lethal, but it needs to be carefully aimed, and you're going to scare everyone else around you every time you fire and kill something. So you need to have that sort of mindset. Right now, even though you are more dangerous in terms of implementation, you're still running around like your revolver is a squirt gun, and you're shooting too many shots constantly at the organization, right? And so people are going to be like, I don't know if this person is actually making smart decisions or not, because you're pushing everything. So be more selective, be more informed, get more people on board so that you don't have to be firing all the bullets yourself. And sure enough, when Mists of Pandaria came around, I think it was actually right before Mists of Pandaria, I can't remember the expansion, Cataclysm, end of Cataclysm, right? I was a little more selective about what I was doing. I was a little bit more careful about how often I was engaging, but I was given ownership of a massive system, a rework of the Warlock class. And so in that one, I went and I started early because the rest of the team was wrapping up other things. I was now fresh on the class team. So I spent almost 3 months of effort just writing down some plans, interacting with the community, figuring out what I wanted to do. And then I went and got all the engineers on board. I grabbed Greg Street. I'm like, hey, can we go grab the engineer? And I just sketched for him what I wanted to do. And the lead engineer, which was Patrick Magruder, we used to call him the MacGyver of World of Warcraft. And we sat and looked at a whiteboard, and I listed all the things he wanted to do. He's like, if you'd come to me with this 3 months later, we couldn't pull this off. But right now, I have Omar on the team, who is a fantastic implementer, who has a ton of free time, and we don't have clear steps from the rest of the class team. So if you put all this stuff in right now, I'll give you everything on this list. I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah. I'm like, here's the list. And Greg was like, well, if that's the case, let's go for it. Greg Street was a phenomenal ally in that organization, by the way. He would champion for you, would help you improve communication, just phenomenal leadership through taking other people and elevating them. And they're over at, Floating Pixel Castle, I believe is the name now. Anyways, so as it turns out, because I knew the organization and the right timing and worked with someone who had the clout to say, yes, this is the direction we want to go, it took off, and it was considered probably one of, if not the best, which I think it was the best in a survey of 110,000 players of the Warlock class, that this rework was the best one. It was because we got the resources at the right time, in the right place, and we're able to build everything we needed and then figured out all the details later. And when everyone else was finally on the project, stressed, engaged, and all of a sudden those 2 guys that suddenly had been full-time supporting me had to now support 9 other classes. Well, they had a 9th of the times. They got a 9th of the features across those classes. And so, and that was around the time that I moved up to mid-level from junior, right? And that turned into being very impactful. Now, that said, shortly after Mists of Pandaria launched, I went over to Riot and then moved up to a kind of a senior systems designer, I think it was eventually. And that was an organizational jump. In that case, that was actually very much about alignment, right? I'd realized at a certain level that I was trying to turn the game I was working on, World of Warcraft, into a game that I wanted to play, which, as it turns out, wasn't an MMO anymore. It's more of an action game. And having that realization, right, and that, hey, I've been working on a genre that was convenient to me, that basically was like going through adolescence, game development adolescence, right? Where I'm like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but here's the people helping me grow. They're teaching me in their own ways. But now it's time to hit 18, get out of the house, and actually work on something I enjoy with people that I've known for a while. And then that's where your next transformation comes. That's where you're now thinking about, okay, not only have I learned how to work with an organization, how do I transform myself into the role and the type of life I want?
Yeah, beautifully put. I want to ask you very directly, like based on especially that story, I think there's a lot of things we could dive into there, but I want to ask you this one question. So
go for it.
If you are an implementer, what is the fastest way to feel heard in an organization, like get a project on board?
Okay. Number one, if you are an implementer, your first thing should be spending time leveling other people up around you. Utilize your skills to help others, because you need a groundswell of support in order to step up and take on bigger things. Now, you can take on a one-person job and volunteer your time, do a thing and make that happen. But when you want organizational growth, you need organizational support. In my case, the way I did that was I went to all of the quest designers, all of the level designers, a lot of the spell designers, because I was a better implementer. in Lua than most of them, because I've been doing it for 3 years at the point. And a lot of people were scared of the spell system. So I would write things that were reusable for them. I would teach them how things were structured. I wouldn't go in all full depth, but I'd do just enough they'd get interested in saying, hey, how can I do this? There was a guy named Eric Malouf. He went by the username Cleric, Blizzard Cleric. And I just taught how to basically do some very, very basic scripting. And he'd started looking at it, but didn't quite click how it connected with the game engine. And I just built a bunch of examples, and he would come to me over and over and over again. And that led to him telling the quest team, hey, Mr. Brazie will help you out, which led to his lead, basically coming to be like, I have an impossible thing I want to do. I want to make dragons fly in a game without flying. And I went and implemented that and made that work. And then that led to that person taking the team, go hit up this guy when you need cool shit and the programmers are busy. Because guess what? We designed, he has capacity. And that led to me having a bunch of people who trusted me. That then got noticed. I was on the encounter team, and so I moved beyond encounters. I went and worked on quests and supported the quest team. That then led to me getting close to the class team. And then the class team, when my previous lead moved off the team, Greg Street was like, hey, you know what? I want to work with you. Why don't you come join my team? And I'm like, I don't know what I'll do. He's like, yeah, just do support stuff for now, and then opportunity will come up. And sure enough, when one designer was way overloaded, he was working on monks and priests and a bunch of other things, said, I can't handle all these classes. I'm like, I played a warlock. I would love to do some changes there. And they were like, sure, just take it off my plate. And that led to probably the most interesting project of my Blizzard life. So
beautiful. Organizational support. It's weird when I look at it, because I'm hearing you say your story and I'm thinking of what I did. And yeah, all the little things add up, man. I don't know how else to put it.
Yep.
Like, they all add up. If people, keyword is also trust, and also, I'm going to use the word like you. Like, when people like you, like they like you because like, look, this guy's done X, Y, Z for me. It almost like, even if you say the exact same thing, but if people like you, they're going to just listen to the words and maybe even ask you questions more, where like, yeah, you start turning the water pistol into like, I don't know, one of those ones from China where you can like pull them up laser and at least they're going to feel something type thing, like a stronger version. It's super nice. Perfect. So we've got a lot of questions coming in the chat. So we're at half an hour. So I'm just going to quickly pause and mention, everyone, there is going to be recording. So get your questions in and you will get the recording. And also for anyone who's joined late, so we're doing a how to get a job and how to get a promoted live stream. For everyone who don't know who Alex is and want to kind of learn more, I'm going to take an opportunity to just drop his Discord. And while I find the link, do you mind telling people what they're going to expect if they join the Discord, Alex?
Oh, absolutely. So I run the Funsmith Club, which is, funsmith.club. And basically what we have there is every 2 weeks, or maybe almost every week now, we run playtest sessions where designers bring in their new games. They can use them both for feedback from, going and reviewing things with each other, as well as bringing in your own games, getting people to play test things and help you learn, as well as your ability to learn and observe from others. In addition to that, we have now an immense breadth of people. I think we have almost 5,600 people now in that Discord who all have either are professional game designers, are hobbyist game designers, or are indie developers who are going and developing, or students like many of the people here who want to learn about game design. And so we've got discussions going on about game engines. We had one about, design structure and philosophy and systems design, and people talking about the latest events about, game design and development, but not just from the, hey, it's fun. Yes, there is a meme channel. Apparently, Devil May Cry took over all of May. I don't understand that, but hey, it happened. But it's really just a community of people who love game design, want to talk and analyze things, and are willing to critique each other and examine things together, right? And I think that's really, really valuable. And occasionally I'll pop in there and answer questions, as well as, and of course, the students who are taking classes with us, like our upcoming cohort for game writing, game design, systems, and so on, have private channels there to interact and examine the course.
Perfect. I just want to stress for everyone listening, if you're currently looking for a job or looking to kind of get upgraded, and the only people you speak to are, let's say, your immediate family and your colleagues, this is just a perfect way to just get like literally 6,000 other people who are all doing the same thing and you just don't feel alone. Like when I started my business last year, I joined a lot of different communities, and I just didn't feel alone. It's like, here's like 10 other business owners. This person's 10 step ahead. This person's behind me. I was giving them advice. And it's just like, it just felt like school in a nice way again. And I think in game development, when I speak to people, like what are they doing to find a job? You can get lonely, like really lonely. And then if there's no one kind of giving you feedback or no one who's been there, done that, it's just, I think even just for that community feel, just to speak to other people who are doing what you're doing is massive. So I've seen a couple of people scan, but I thought I'd drop that in for anyone who can't stay for the whole event. So that link I will leave on screen for a few more seconds, and just join that, because then you can get the resources as well. Fantastic. Okay, Alex, I have some questions here, but we've got some really interesting questions from the chat. So I'm just going to go straight in to questions from the chat. So if anyone's got any questions for Alex about how to get a job, you can make it as tactical as you want for yourself. We can get straight into it. So I'm going to start highlighting questions from the chat. Alrighty. So we have a long one here from Carlos. So I'm going to read it. So do you think it's necessary to know how to program or implement mechanics or other features as a game designer in order to be considered valid in the industry?
So there are companies where you don't need that, right? There are companies that have their designers be entirely documentation based. However, I believe that in general, you want to be an implementer on top of a designer, because otherwise you are waiting for everyone else to work, and that's going to slow you down. You're going to be 5, 6, 7 times slower if you can't implement or at least tweak game mechanics, variables inside your engine, right? The way I'd like to think about it, right, is it's really transparent what an artist brings to the table. It's really a little less more opaque what a programmer brings to the table. A level designer, very clear. You see their spaces, you navigate those spaces, etc. But when it comes to a purely theoretical or documentation-based designer, it's harder, right? Because how many iterations did they go through? How many variations of thought did they consider before taking this path? The end documents don't tend to showcase that. And that's the understanding and thinking patterns you need to see to hire someone and understand what they do, which is why portfolios and portfolio content for pure designers is rough. Whereas instead being able to show a little video of here's something I implemented and changed. Here are the 7 changes I did to make it feel incredibly better or work more effectively. Or here's a spreadsheet I set up, and then here's where I realized problems are going to occur. And seeing that they have those critical thinking skills is everything, right? So can you? Absolutely. Should you? I would say no. You don't need to be a full-on programmer, but I think everyone should aim to be a junior programmer. And again, vibe coding or utilizing things like Claude or ChatGPT to help you code, you can do that. But ultimately, you need to understand what it's giving you if you're going to be putting something into a game engine. Otherwise, you could just be sabotaging your own, team. So be very careful about that. And if you have moderate to early to mid-level programming experience, and you do like, how do I approach something? How do I do a for loop? How do I iterate over an array in this language or whatever? Then fine, right? Because you understand what you're achieving and why you're doing it, as opposed to copy pasting code blindly. So I would say yes, get some implementation skills. It's just going to make it easier for you to find jobs. And in a really tight market like this, you need as many skills behind you as possible while showcasing that level of depth in game design itself.
Like, even if you never use the implementation skills help you market your theoretical game design skills.
That's right.
Yeah, because when you said game design portfolios are rough, I just imagine what that would look like. And yeah, it's just text, right? It's like, okay.
Well, no, actually, that's a great example of where it's not just text. It starts with a doc, but often I'm going to talk about Chris McGinty. He was not the most programmer heavy designer. He was one of the best game designers I've worked with, but he drew incessantly. He would draw examples of how things would work. I have little bubble diagrams of like concepts he had for a level design mechanic. It was like a water bubble. And he like, well, here's a water bubble being pushed by a leaf, something that went into Ori in the Will of the Wisps. Or here's a bunch of falling sand and how you would interact with it. And he just had tons. He had the ability to communicate the transcended text, right? In my case, my communication tends to jump into engine. All right, this is hard to explain, but let me just showcase what it would look like, and demonstrate it in engine. Here's something that's playable. Do you understand how this feels better, right? But in his case, he would be really good at visualizing, communicating, getting people on board and using that emotional excitement and visualization of the future to get people on board. And now he's working with, I think, Studio MDR now and absolutely killing it over there.
Beautiful. So whether it's art or engine, a secondary skill to a game designer is like, how do you showcase like what you're trying to put on paper here is massive. Lovely. So we've got loads of questions. So we're going to do Q&A for the rest of the time because last time we did Q&A was really nice. So let's do some rapid fire ones and we can always go further. So I'm going to quickly get Carlo's second part of his question, which was, so this is his personal context. He is, what can I do to improve and showcase my work as a content designer? I don't have much experience in the role yet. So yes, we mentioned we want a secondary skill to showcase it, but I guess if they don't have any practical experience yet, like what's the best way to get that?
Sure. Well, actually, as it so happens, David Zhang, my business partner, is teaching a course this summer on how to build a game design portfolio. He's working currently with level designers, but the same concepts apply to content designers. How do you create things? How do you showcase your process? How do you present it in a way that is meaningful and significant? So if you hop on over on our Discord, we actually do have, I think we just did the free version of the class, which was basically, hey, here's an introduction to setting up a portfolio and structuring it. But we also have a paid version that runs 4 weeks at the end of one of our boot camps. And so I would say go check it out. But the general concepts are build something, break it down, showcase your process, and then build a portfolio out of it. And even though it's a rough portfolio, it's a starting point, then go back, do it again on another project, replace those steps with better versions over and over and over again. But he gives really specific details, like how to utilize color and attention and shape, and and shows some really incredible portfolios that the students put together last quarter in spring. So nice.
And it's a living, breathing document, right? I think one thing that I don't know if you can speak to this, like some people feel like, oh, just need to do a little bit more before they actually start with like, okay, this is now my portfolio. But like, you just need to just start, sooner than you think, right?
Yeah. And capture things. Capture evidence of your development while you're developing long before you start the portfolio, right? Don't assume that, take screenshots when you're building something throughout the whole process, because that will be really useful later. A lot of people think they're going to stop, make some perfect thing, and then showcase it. No, I mean, that's even for the people who like worked on Call of Duty or Apex Legends. I'm thinking of Michael Anderson right now, right? They don't just have this magical thing and showcase. They can showcase the entire process of how they got there because they kept records as they built things. So that's huge as well.
1,000%. In recruitment, it'd be so crazy. Like if I were leaving recruitment and I tried to get a new recruitment job, the easiest thing for me to get a job was like, here's how many placements I made in each month. I made sure I exported that. They don't give you that. If I quit, I would have to probably start knocking, like, please tell me what I did for the company. But because I made sure I get those screenshots on a CV, it's like, this is how I did it. This is how it's done. And this is what I did differently compared to everyone around me. Like when I got the actual interview, they always used to say, it's like, they didn't have to guess if I was an ROI. It's like, there you are. That's how you did it. You can do that for us. I'm like, yes. So same thing I feel like with game design. If you just showed it irrefutable proof, like, okay, this is how he thinks. Amazing. I don't have to interview him to figure that out.
Yep. When I worked on No Rest for the Wicked, right, I was probably the first full-time designer on that project completely, aside from the owner. And a lot of it was understanding just, hey, what are the sequence of events that need to occur and what order do we go through it? And then how should the team attack and approach it to be efficient and effective all the way through? And guess what? That makes a difference. When you can showcase you understand the road a company is going down before they've even realized they're on that road, it will knock the socks off of any organizational owner because they're like, oh, wait, this is the future? I don't know if I believe that. Then they'll remember that conversation, come back a month later, like, okay, this is correct. We went down the wrong road. And then pivot. Ideally a month later, not 4 or 5 months later,
I actually do the same thing I recommend it to my clients. So this is from a business development perspective. I will get back to the questions. I think it's important. This is, if you are consulting someone or just giving advice and you feel like they're not going to listen, this will happen. But the best thing you can do is say, this is what's going to happen in 3 months' time. Problem 1, problem 2, problem 3. This is what I would do to avoid it. Obviously, good luck. But if anything happens between now and then, I'm a text away. And then, especially like a business development sense. I'm like, look, you're going to spend X amount of money on this conference. You're going to have X, Y, Z results, but you're not going to be doing blah, 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 blah. And then it happens like, Harry, we need help. I'm like, yeah, cool. But this has happened to a lot of my other clients. Like they actually unconsciously do that. Like the first call they have with a client is, these are your problems. This is what's going to happen. Obviously, good luck, but let us know if you need help. And then afterwards, like, yep, those problems, this is on fire. We need help. But they're not going to remember that if you just told them in a kind of, oh, you're doing it wrong. You want to be like, look, this is what's happening. I'm just saying.
Yep. You have to let people have the realization they need you. You cannot force anyone in life to believe they need you. It just is not how people work.
It's a good quote. It's a good quote. All righty. Let's go rapid fire questions. How much time do I have you for, Alexander? Do I have you for 14 minutes?
Yeah, we've got 14 minutes left. So let's get into it.
Let's do it. All righty. Okay. I'm going to be reading these questions out and I might be paraphrasing, but it's just to get it all good. So Tiago, hey, hello, Alex. Thank you for your multiple events. They help out a lot. My question is about specialization. I would say I have a good amount of experience with system design and some even professionally. How best to showcase that in my portfolio? So
I saw Tiago yesterday, I think, in our portfolio and interviews class in the Discord. So good to see you again, Tiago. All right, system design, right, is one of those things where people kind of hesitate. They're like, this is behind the scenes stuff. I'm not the guy that everyone knows. I didn't make Mario, right? But guess what? Figuring out scoring systems, XP charts, things like that, they're meaningful. What you need to do is take the raw data of what you built and show how it was meaningful to players. In the case of World of Warcraft, right, I worked with Chris Zierhut and we revised the XP curves for 6-7 expansions, changed all of the numbers in the game. How do we manage to do that without completely shattering and breaking the game completely? Well, as it turns out, that is because we knew what was meaningful to players. How many monsters do you kill to level up? How many quests do you do to level up? As long as those numbers work, those numbers, the meaningful points of contact for the player didn't change or changed like very marginally, we were safe, right? And so with your systems design work, ask yourself, how does your systems design affect the players? Well, I ensured that players would get like 3 levels within their first session, that they would have 12 things to do, and that eventually they would have 27 things to do, but that wouldn't happen any faster than a month, right? Showcase how you think about your systems design work, right? Showcase how you change player lives. That is always the testament of a game designer.
Like telling the story of the systems you're building, because no one's going to do that for you, right?
Phenomenal way of phrasing it. Yes. Turn your story. Here's a great example. I built the pet battle system in World of Warcraft, right? I did almost, Pat McKellar and another gent whose name is slipping my mind because the moment I see his face instantly, built, the engine to support it and had basically a simple turn-based system and a rendering system, but then said, Alex, you just want to go and do the rest, so just go and do the rest, right? And what did I do? Well, I figured out, what does the future me need? Right? I knew I needed a system where I could write how everything behaved. But at the end of the day, making content fast, all I had to do was change numbers. So first I built that. Then I went and built a text version of the game that just said, Pet Battle 1 does attack A, that does damage, and then does damage, and then does damage, and then whatever. And then I went and said, okay, now how do I present it? And then worked with Darren to go ahead and say, hey, now we're going to render this attack 1, attack 1, attack 1, damage numbers float up in a bunch of things. And we did that step by step by step. And as it turns out, while building this system, we engaged with other designers on the team. It turns out they had uses for these systems as well. So in the process of understanding that I had not only built something that I could be as flexible as I needed, I made the interface as simple as possible so others could utilize it, which in the long run led to the ability to do in-game cinematics in World of Warcraft. Congratulations. I just went from like, how did we go from hey, I'm making this really niche feature for a mini game, for a side quest of a project, and then all of a sudden changed how questing was done in the entire game for the rest of their lifetime.
Beautiful. All right. Next question. This is a big one. So, Mohsin, the industry itself is going through a big cataclysm. We might ask you first on what you think, if that's true. So especially with the layoffs of different industries, I'm currently in college at the moment. What is the best way to make yourself stand out from other people? Also, I plan to get into narrative design. Any tips for jobs in narrative design specifically?
Sure. So for narrative design, number one, if you haven't read Narrative Design for Indies by Edwin McRae, it's a tiny, thin little book. I have a copy of it sitting right over there on my shelf. Start with that. Once you get through that, again, which is pretty quick, you should check out Kelly Bender and Kelly Bender's advice, right? Kelly has been doing this for years and years and years and worked every narrative design job out there, from writing to contextualization to working with environment artists and so on. And he just has immensely phenomenal advice. It would be, complete hubris of me to presume that I would be as good a advice giver on that in narrative design when my specialization is systems and gameplay, right? I'm now an action game combat designer, but that took years to develop, right? That said, again, be the same thing. Be able to structure your thinking, be able to explain where and when you use barks, be able to understand how to give context to level designers so they can do the storytelling of the game without using words as often as possible. Understand the creation of artifacts, whether it's signs or road posts or whatever it is you need within the game world to support and explain it. Again, it is absolutely a cataclysm, and it's born from a number of things. Overinvestment in the whole NFT industry, right? Basically drained a lot of the cash that would have gone into AI research. Now, AI research is going on and showing dividends, but it turns out it's going to take another 5 years to produce the things that people imagined was going to happen within 2 years. That's fine. But as a result, they're pulling money out of immediate short-term projects and investment to deal with these long-term investments in these technologies, and are doing so on a shorter budget. And so we're seeing all of these games collapsing down. Add on to that the government funding of cheap loans that went into the tech industry and so on, which basically happened because we had a very low interest rate, amongst other things, and all of these debts that are now being paid off. And we are in a very, very tough time for people in tech and emerging markets. So you really do have to stand out. You need to self-invest. This is the time to be growing yourself, building things, work with the other people who are out of work, make text example projects together, develop yourself, whether it's through classes that are with my company or other companies or watching YouTube videos, it doesn't matter. Build yourself up so that when those opportunities do come, again, your preparation meets the opportunity and then everyone else calls it luck.
Exactly. And everyone else calls it luck is a nice way to put it. Like, you just need to level yourself up and then put yourself out there, in that order. Beautiful. All righty. So got some other questions here. So let's have a go. We actually done the questions. Nice. So anyone's got any questions, come in, but I'm going to ask some of my own. So regarding, I guess, these are some just funny questions I got prepared here. So what's a dumb way to ask for a promotion?
A dumb way to ask promotion. Dumb in terms, so whenever I hear someone use a word that is very generic, I always like to dig into it. By dumb, do you mean ineffective or like a way that is so low resistance anyone could do it?
Borderline negative. It was
borderline negative. Hey, I deserve a promotion, give it to me. That can work, but it's shows no awareness whatsoever, right? Now, there are some people who have been overperforming for so long, that conversation is better than saying nothing, right? I want to emphasize action over inaction, bravery over fear. However, it's far more effective that 6 months before you want to ask for a promotion, basically be like, hey, I feel like I've been working towards this for a long time, and my options are either to move to another organization or to, either to move to another organization to get that role or to level up to what's needed to fulfill that role here. So what do I need to do in the next 6 months to land that position? And that will immediately do two things. Number one, it will clearly communicate to the other person, you are willing to go. You are willing to walk away, because there's no one easier to push around than someone who is unwilling to walk away. This is true in relationships. This is true in business. This is true in family. Again, I need to emphasize this. Some people get terrified when I say walk away from your family if you need to, but it can be incredibly important to do so for your own growth, for for the family's own success. Sometimes if they're relying on you too much and not developing independence, you need to walk away. Again, no one is going to promote someone who they don't, in some level, believe could walk away and achieve better results somewhere else. So You need to establish that and that you're willing to consider that. 2, you need to ask for, hey, what the guidance? You understand what you need to do. And then the best case scenario, someone looks up and is like, oh yeah, you're right. It's been 3 years. It's probably about time. You've been outperforming this role and doing with that role for a while now. Yeah, we should recognize that organizationally. And then they become your advocate moving up the chain. And the easiest, lowest friction one is everyone recognizes you, sees your impact, and goes. That's rarely how it actually plays out. You need someone to speak up for me and say, hey, this person's on my team. I need them. Here's what they do. Here's how hard it would be to replace them. We should level them up.
Knowing your worth. Like you mentioned, it took you a while to figure out that you were actually 3x or 10x. You need to actually be thinking about, okay, wait,
yeah,
what am I worth on paper? If a designer costs X and I'm doing 3 times that much, wait a minute. I'm a good ROI for the studio right now. I should probably, make that either known or, like you said, the way you put it, like, what do I need to do?
I was overcome with fear. I had been through my first job was as a producer. I'd been fired. My first company after 3 years of work, had closed down. Right. So I was still paralyzed and bound by fear that I couldn't go anywhere else, or if I went anywhere else, who would even actually want me? Right. And there's how would I phrase this without sounding too rude? No, let's just be rude about it. You are easily manipulated when you are afraid. The more afraid you are, the more you will cling to someone's manipulation and just to give you that sense of safety, right? You can go read any book on this that they understand this how it works. But the more willing you are to take risks, to try new things, to go, and in my case, I jumped into consultancy, even though I didn't know what a consultant really did, right? And be willing to go and take risks for your own growth, the more likely are you understand your worth, the impact you have in organizations, the difficulties that organizational leaders are going through, and be able to satisfy those needs, right? And that's the ability to move up.
Lovely. Joe's question. Hey, Alex, I have my first AAA level design interview this week. Congrats, Joe. And I was curious, do you have any tips that help me stand out in the interview process?
Oh, man. Okay, I'm going to give a couple that are softballs that I suspect, because Joe's been around game design skills, so he's heard this one before, but I think the audience will love this one. The first mistake that proves to me someone is a junior, okay, that they are basically at or below the bar for a job as a game designer. They immediately start answering the question right away. Let's do a little role play here. If we got a minute, I know we'll extend this a couple minutes. If you've got a couple minutes, give me a game design question. Just ask me something you think a level designer would get asked. Really basic.
Okay. How long should this level take to complete?
Oh my God, 5 minutes every single time. 5 minutes is the perfect amount of time for a game. That's it. Final answer, done. That's a terrible answer, right? Because I've done no work there. I've just picked a number and gone with it. But let me give you a better answer. Okay, what type of game are we making here, Harry? Is it a mobile game where we need to be, basically people need to be in and out? Is this a subway game? Is this a game where you can pause frequently? Or is this an epic RPG where we're expecting people to sit down for 8 hours for a session at night? What kind of game are we making?
It's a horror co-op game.
A holdover co-op game?
Horror
co-op game. All right. So horror co-op games need to basically have longer levels, but short increments between them, because when you have 2 people working together, it creates a lot of friction. Someone's struggling, someone's taking time. It might, like I was playing Split Fiction with a friend of mine, and we would have really good experiences, but every once in a while, she would really struggle with a section of the game. If we had to redo the whole level every time that she failed something, she would feel devastated, like the relationship is falling apart. So in that case, we want longer levels. So we have kind of a big chunk, but we can pick it up from any milestone of 5-10 minutes within there. Okay, dramatically better answer, right? But it's the same answer.
Yeah, and you get to showcase, right? You want to give yourself a layup in the interview. Like the biggest thing I had because when I was a recruiter, I had the luxury, which a lot of agencies didn't do. I sat on like 100 interviews. I'm not sure if that's proper, but it was the fact that I was able to sit on all these interviews, and the ones that always got the job were the ones that, yes, asked questions, but also, like you said, clarified the question. Just like when you clarify the question, you can then actually answer it and then also make sure that it gets answered, rather than question, answer, fingers crossed at the end I got 8 out of 10. But you can just make sure every answer is a 10 out of 10. And then the best thing, I used to give advice. There will be a question you don't know the answer to. And one of the interviewers said, I on purpose ask questions which I know are impossible for them to ask. I even go through their CV and I know for a fact they wouldn't know the answer to this, to see how they would phrase it. And when I coached people, I used to say, if you don't know the answer to a question, that's amazing, because now you can showcase you're a fast learner. So you say, I actually don't know the answer. Is it similar to XYZ? Stop talking. And then they say, yes. Okay, cool. Based on my experience with this thing, I don't think it will take me that long time to learn, because when this happened to me before, I picked it up in this way. So I'm quite confident I will take care of it. You just said, I don't know, but in the best way possible, right?
Yeah. That said, I don't know is the right way to start that answer. It should not be where you ended, right?
Yes.
And just for Joe's sake, a slightly higher level answer, since I know you're a little bit above that sort of junior response, is utilize frameworks and showcase how you utilize frameworks to approach your level designs, right? Frameworks give you structure that transcends product and allows you to basically find more efficient and effective ways of repeating your work and creating a system out of a single experience.
Beautiful. Alvaro vouches for the statement. Alrighty. So I might not be able to highlight them, but I do see the question from Gustav. So Gustav, thank you so much for the insightful talk. I've been working on games for the past 5+ years and recently completed a master's degree in game design. Congrats. While I'm now exploring full-time opportunities, I found it challenging to position myself for a higher level role, since I technically lack professional studio experience, even though I have significant hands-on experience with game development. What would you recommend to someone in my position to better navigate job applications and increase the chances of landing a more experienced or specialized role despite not having traditional industry experience?
Okay. So we answered this a little bit earlier in the call, but I'm going to emphasize it again. Higher level, junior, mid, senior, lead, etc. I'm going to say senior and above is not about skill in design. It just isn't, right? Junior is like, hey, do you have enough skill that you're worth training? Mid-level is, can you execute with reasonable amounts of supervision, right? Like, say, just a lead directing it correctly. A master's degree is not going to get you above mid-level. It just isn't, right? Because the skills of a senior and the skills of a lead is organizational. So if you want to move up, you need to be in an organization, working with an organization, and showcasing organizational skills. So if you spent those 5 years working in games, but you've done it all alone, you don't really have organizational skills except for how you planned and did your own time management. Now in the Toby Fox world, right, that's the guy who did Undertale, then great, right? You can showcase that you have those skills and so on, but that's not going to land an organizational senior or lead role. But if you're trying to build and position yourself and to hit that mid-level and you're always hitting junior, 5 years should be enough experience if you've been implementing, designing, and thinking and documenting and writing all your stuff down to get a mid-level role. But it means you need to showcase yourself, build an effective portfolio, understand how to handle job interview questions. If you're struggling with those things, there are classes, teachers, myself, and others who answer and help you work and mentor you through those sort of challenges.
Sure.
Again, it's not about traditional versus untraditional. It's about understanding what they need in that role.
Alex, do you have time for one more question in the chat?
Yeah. You know what? David will forgive me being late for the next meeting. So let's do it.
Great. And while we do that, because Alex won't do it, I'm going to do it for him. They have classes, and these classes are amazing. So I've actually sponsored my god brother to do one of these classes back in January, and he had a very, very good time. So I literally put my money where my mouth is. I wasn't gone through the course, but I got the review from my god brother. He had a very good time. So the start date for this is June 21st. All I'm asking you to do is just have a chat with them, guys. Just join the Discord, find out some information, and one of these boot camps likely will be for you, whether it's helping you showcase your current ability a lot better, or kind of speaking on what you said earlier, Alex, with the framework. So if you have anything to add on that, Alex, but I just want to say, like, guys, just go and find some detail. Join the Discord.
Yeah, I'm going to say that, obviously we're just about to start. So I think we've got, 10 seats left in a couple of these classes. The game writing and level design ones have a additional section that is immensely phenomenal about portfolio creation. Mine actually ends with a 4-week section on job interviews where we actually go through role playing. You get to listen to all of the students answer questions that are actual interview questions. We even have a section that we're probably going to repeat again, where we do game interview tricks, where we set people up for failure in a question or have an interviewer intentionally be rude and see how they handle it. It turns out this was transformational for a couple of our folks to be able to go and get past hurdles in this rather aggressive job market. So
yeah, when you think about it, practicing interviews only when it literally is the only thing that matters in that moment is probably not amazing. But you want to practice doing a UFC fight, not usually in UFC, right? You want to do it outside. So that's actually a very good idea. Sweet. I just swapped the barcode, guys. So if you click that link, it'll take you to the page I'm showing now. And if you click View Bootcamp, it just tells you what it's in. And then you can also have a chat with the team to see if it's relevant for you guys. Alrighty. And okay, so Tiago's second question, which is, there we go. So in the current industry, I also need to work and look for jobs outside of the games industry. How do I show my work as a game designer interesting for other jobs? For example, QA, project management, and others.
Okay. Now, Tiago, are you out of Spain or out of Brazil? I'm not quite sure, or Greece. That said, all three of those actually have very similar... Brazil? Fantastic. Okay. So out of Brazil is growing immensely in the games industry right now. It's probably one of the fastest growing, labor bases right now. And if you're going for QA or project management, then you want to showcase a couple of things. QA is about rigor, right? Do you understand steps? Can you develop steps and can you follow them and repeat them and consistently work through them? Project management is about, can you do the same thing as QA, but with people? Can you work with people, track where their progress is, put pressure on them in a way that is not ineffective, but also isn't irritating them all of the time? Right. So in that case, it's not your game design work. In this case, this is the opposite of the question, where that Toby Fox moment of, here is how I organized myself. Here is the steps I went through. Here is the schedule I created myself. Here is the step-by-step testing I did, is actually phenomenal. So whereas I was talking about just a moment ago, like, hey, the Toby Fox thing isn't great for a mid or senior level position, or it's good for mid, but not for a senior or a lead position in a big company. For project management or QA, it's actually the opposite. Your understanding of more steps within the organization and development and your ability to empathize with people going through those processes and support them is what QA and project management do. And so that's how you would want to approach those.
Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Lovely. And I've had 4 people scan that QR code, so I'll leave it up for a screen for a little bit. So Alex, thank you so much for your time. If anyone wants to come, get in touch, they can join the Discord. But also, guys, on LinkedIn, you post a lot of this advice in a lot of detail, and you've got a whole website as well, gamedesignskills.com. So this is just me plugging that in. Anything you want to leave everyone with?
I actually, do you want a cute little moment real quick, Harry? I got something I can show.
I love cute moments. Let's go.
All right. 1 second here.
Is everyone ready for this cute moment?
It's pretty cute, but it takes a second of preparation. So
I put you on maximize screen to build suspense.
All right. I like to put my money where my mouth is, right? And I said, document things, keep track of the work you did. This stack of papers comprises the 7 years of work and notes that I had when I was working in World of Warcraft, right? They handed me all of this stuff when I exited, stuck it inside a nice little box for me, and I've been able to go back and refer to it over the years. And I just want to say that, like, this is a lot of work to keep track of what I did, why I did it. And some of these, I'm sure, are plenty of blank pages. But when I go back and jog my memories to understand all those decisions that I made, led to writing my blog, coming up with the lessons, the realization that there were things that I had forgotten that I only remembered because I happened to have them written down when I looked again 10 years later. And the need to share that message and those lessons and not have those pass on when I do. And so if there's anything I can encourage people, document things, remember your life, and remember the beautiful moments you have throughout your entire journey. Because as terrifying as it is now to not be landed and have work, I look back and realize that period of growth, understanding, self-development was probably the most beautiful of my own career. And it's the part I look back to fondly. And so try to enjoy it. Try to enjoy the process of growing. Try to find a pace that allows you to do it like a marathon. Keep going. And then leave something behind for your future version when the memories are slipping and you've forgotten all the stuff you've done, and you can look back like, wow, that's right, I did this. What was I thinking back then? And smile and understand that version of the person you are in the future is going to grow from the person you are now. Okay, that's it. That's my moment.
What a moment. Let's go. That was, wow, cinema, as they say. Lovely. Extra point, I just have to say, imagine how much easier it is to train someone new when you literally got the example of what it felt like for you in that moment. Because you can't just do X. You're like, oh, actually, how did I used to think? Oh, like that. That changes things, right? I have these moments so much where you just assume so much because you just forget. And then, yeah, that looks beautiful. Like that right there. Is that digitized?
It is not. That is one of the things I have not done. One of my plans was to go and screenshot every page of this, but it just hasn't become enough of a priority. I need to hand all this to someone, have them just scan it and make a giant PDF out of it. But yeah, I actually have this doc right here was the very first thing I worked on, which was the spawning of Zangar Marsh, right? You can't read it, but it has a list of every monster that the quest designers had spawned. And then I literally have the very first ability was recommended by Jeff Goodman, and it was adding Evil Eye to a Oracle, and a Murloc Oracle. And was it a good idea? Not really, but again, these were flavor abilities, to teach me how to work within the game engine. And I mean, would I even remember this meeting if I didn't have this piece of paper? I doubt it, right? But I remember sitting around that little conference space in between our offices, the square blue chairs, and looking over at these two people who had built the game that I just spent the last 2 years of my life playing and modding. And then the weird, shocking realization that I was now considered one of them. So, or would be soon.
That's beautiful. Please digitize that. Either go to a local print shop and ask them to scan it and then give you a quote, because that is just too cool. That's super nice. The reason I'm getting excited is because, imagine you put that all into an LLM and then you put your current stuff into an LLM and then you start talking to your old self, right?
Oh, God, I don't know if I want to talk to my old self. My old self is kind of a schmuck.
Yeah. We just say, just reduce SAS for me. He's like, no. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, it'll just no, I don't want to do that. Why didn't you want to do it? I'm telling you, this is how you get more effective.
Sweet. Yeah. Alex, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for staying. I'll let you join the next meeting. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. But yeah, thank you again, Alex. And for everyone, please join the Discord, follow Alex. And thank you, Alex.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye. Alrighty. Sweet. Hi, everyone. I will stick around for a few minutes. So in case anyone has a question with getting interviews, getting networking, LinkedIn, or anything to find your first job, get promoted, my background is in recruitment. So I used to place Unity developers at King, Rovio, Tokaboka, all in Sweden. And I used to go to a lot of conferences. So if anyone joined late, I thought I'd stay for an extra 5 or 10 minutes. If anyone's got any questions with regards to interview, getting a job, or all that jazz. So yeah, I'm seeing everyone say thank you in the chat. Fantastic. And yeah, thank you also for joining on late notice. I don't know if everyone saw, but this was originally planned for Thursday. And I know we just got your Monday morning or your Monday evening, depending on where your time zone is. So yeah, thank you so much for spending your Monday with us. Fantastic. Alrighty. Thank you guys. Thank you, Tiago. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, Carl. Yeah, if anyone's got any questions about LinkedIn, personal branding, getting your first job, just fire away. Thank you, Gustav. I'll just stick for a few more minutes. Thanks, Akash. I know you joined late. You will get the recording if you click to register. So if you want to catch the start of the call, you can. Thank you so much. Lovely. Wonderful response. Thank you for the insight. It was a good answer, wasn't it? Alex always delivers, as they say. Sweet. What I will do while the thing kind of goes later, Masin, thanks for answering my question. My laptop's about to die now, but I appreciate this interview a lot. Thank you. Guys, this is not the first one. So this is actually version 2. So we did the last one in January, and that covered other stuff. So I'm actually going to put a link to it in the LinkedIn chat now. So this is why you're not getting hired and how to get the first job. So I've actually just posted the link in LinkedIn. Boom. So that's the link to my YouTube channel and the specific video, which is how to get a job in the games industry. And that's again with Alex. It was 5 months ago now, 50 minutes. And yeah, it was a banger. And I've actually edited that and it's got chapters. So it covers the how to land your first game design job, what recruiters look for in game designers, mistakes, useful resources, reverse engineering games, all that jazz. Alrighty. So yes, 100% Laura. So you mentioned this is around game design, but these are all transferable. So same thing with audio, same thing with building your portfolio. These are a lot of similar kind of answers will answer the similar challenges that you have for sure, 100%. These are very transferable. Alrighty. So I'm going to start answering the questions. So do you think the industry will be stable in the nearest future? Even as a programmer, it's nearly impossible to find something, Unity, Unreal, and even the IT tech is struggling. So Isa, I'm going to check. Thank you, Isa. My pleasure hosting. So you're based in Sweden. I'm just going to quickly look at your background just to see if I can give any personal advice. So, yeah, Glymeria Studios, indie game developer. Alrighty. So I just want to share what I think happens in the game industry when it comes to jobs. And I've been to a few games conferences and I've heard CEOs say this. So headcount, just as a number, will not grow nearly as fast, if not full in some kind of niches for the next few years in games. But the number of revenue coming in is going to go up. So what that means is you basically need to be better, but there's still jobs. It's not like a newspaper company where there's less users, there's less players. So players are going up, there's more people playing games, and there's more money coming in. However, the jobs might be less. So what does this actually mean in practice? So what I used to do as a recruiter was literally host podcasts with hiring managers, become friends with them by just giving them value, staying top of mind. And then on our catch-up calls, I used to say, what's coming up? And he used to mention, we have this project coming on. We might need to hire this person. I'm like, oh, I just had Jerry finish a contract at this studio. I think he'd be really good for XYZ. Would you like to see him? And they said, sure. They saw the CV and then like, oh, actually, we would like to interview that person. Amazing. Then they interviewed that person. And then they were so good, they created a role for Jerry before the job ad went out. Okay, so I want to break down why that's important. So there are jobs happening right now which are not public, which is called like the kind of hidden job market. There's a stat going around. I don't know how you measure it, but let's say 80% of jobs, if we use a random number, aren't posted as a job ad. My real example now, I'm hiring writers. I haven't placed a job for a writer because I found someone on LinkedIn. The other one was a friend who I already knew, and the other one was also a friend I already knew. So I'm at the moment, rather than go put a job ad and interview people, I'm going to test it with them three because I know. Because putting a job ad takes time. So what does this mean for ISA in your specific situation? You basically need to be known before the need is there. And I know that sounds kind of, okay, how do I actually do that? So I'll explain. So Discord communities like the FunSip group, amazing. There's also Slack communities for game dev. There's quite a few of those. So you want to look and actually find all these game dev communities and be known as someone who helps around. So when anyone thinks, oh, I need X developer who's available, you come top of mind. Another thing, there are companies who are growing in general. So rather than go straight for the hiring manager or the CEO, if you go for a peer, so this could be a game developer, senior game developer, and try to network with that person on LinkedIn, you'd be surprised at the response. A tactical way to do this is go to Amir Satvat. So Amir Satvat's profile, and he has a spreadsheet where people have volunteered to be a mentor. And most of them have jobs. So now imagine this. You go on there and you want to get a mentor to level yourself up as an engineer, right? So if you got the mentors and you reach out and said, hey, could we have an informational interview? 15 minutes. I just have a few questions about X, Y, Z. Would really appreciate your time. If you send that to 50 or so people, you might get 5 calls. On those calls, you booked it for 15 minutes. You come in prepared. You say, hey, amazing. I would love to know more about your work. What lessons you would tell your former self. You're not looking for a job here. You're just looking to learn from this person. And you ask all the questions you want to ask, whether it's about improving your job hunt, all that jazz. At the 14-minute mark, this is the key. You're going to ask, hey, thank you so much for your time. I've set aside my whole hour just in case you had the time, because I've really enjoyed this. Otherwise, it's been fantastic, and I'm going to take your advice and let you know what happened. But then a lot of those people will then say, oh, I have the hour. Let's continue chatting. And then you can go even deeper. Now imagine this. You do that with 5 people, and then 2 people stay for the whole hour, and they empathize with you as a person, Isa. Then you can say, amazing. Could we do this next month too? I would love to take what you've taught me and implement that, whether it's build a portfolio, post something, network, what, blah, blah, blah. And then you get a yes. And then you can get a recurring invite in the diary with someone who's either a manager sometimes, in a hiring position eventually, or knows people who do. So now you have recurring calls with mentors who you've basically done the job of a recruiter. Because what did I do before? My only job was to stay in contact with all the people who hired Unity developers in Sweden. There was only like 15. There was only like 15 people in Stockholm who actually hired Unity developers. And I had them on my diary, and I was talking to them every month. So anytime someone had a job, I'd be like, hey, I have someone available. So if you did this as a job seeker, and I know because no one does this, and I've spoken to people who hire, and they'd love to mentor people who would actually listen and implement their advice. So this isn't impossible what I'm suggesting. So to recap, find mentors / people who could be hiring and have conversations with them, and then take their advice and try to do that on a monthly basis, because now you're that friend. You're the friend of a friend now, because you're like the person they're mentoring. And also in that mentoring period, you're showing how good you are, and then they can then vouch for you. Also, you're learning, and it's free education. So yeah, if I was trying to get a job, join communities and get those recurring calls, and of course do the job applications. But if you do this thing with the recurring calls, it's crazy. I'd say how fast you get a job. It's a big difference. You want to be asking all your friends regularly, that type of thing. Alrighty. Hopefully that helps, Isa. Alrighty. I'm going to quickly go through the questions. So Gustav, do you ever do portfolio reviews? So I hired Unity developers, so I didn't. However, the Alexander, he has a website called gamedesign.skills.com, and they actually have a whole article on portfolio reviews. So I would go to their website and check that article out, because that one's pretty good. But yeah, thank you. Alrighty. What pro tips do you have for someone like me in production to get my next production role in the difficult time in the industry? So very good production people is very hard to find. Like when I was a contract recruiter, production roles weren't uncommon. If someone's leaving production and you need a good producer, like they're not easy to find. So it's kind of similar to what I said to Isa. You need to stay top of mind for all the people hiring. So if someone's looking for a producer, you want to be the first person that comes to mind. Like, oh, you're that amazing producer. So if you don't have work right now, you have more time than someone who does. And then if you are the person posting on LinkedIn, whether it's updates of the job hunt in a positive way, you want to show that you're someone who's a go-getter, who's looking out and being proactive, and then connecting with people proactively. So this is all the hiring managers, sending them a nice connection request. So you build a list of all the companies hiring, and then on LinkedIn for free, just find all the relevant job titles. So you want to connect with all the producers, and you want to proactively build a network of people who could hire you. And then you can send them messages, and rather than ask for a job, just ask for advice. Like, hey, could I not bite your ear off, like give me 30 minutes of your time, but I'd ask them a very specific question about something that they've done in the past. So it doesn't feel like that much energy. And like in my situation, if someone asked me a question about LinkedIn, I would answer, if it's specific, with a voice note usually. And then you can show your appreciation and then hopefully start a conversation. Long story short, do this enough time, have enough conversations, you're going to be putting your fingers in many pies. So number one, do your applications. But number two, you want to be joining these communities and be top of mind by proactively kind of going to the conferences local to you, maybe investing a tiny amount into going to like the big conferences. and kind of, asking directly the people who have the access, like, okay, what are you looking for in a producer? Who's looking for a producer? You want to be finding who's hiring by asking people who are kind of in that position already. Eduardo, will this live event be available to watch later? Yes, it will be. I'll be looking to release it as soon as possible on my YouTube. So if everyone here subscribes to the podcast, you will get the announcement there. So I've just posted it in the chat. Alrighty. Pleasure. Thank you, Isa. I'm glad that it was resonated, and thank you for hosting this wonderful event. Amazing. Alrighty. So any tips for where we could find the game design communities that are on Slack? So I'm in one in the UK. Honestly, I use AI. I use like Perplexity. So if I literally share my screen, I find AI to be very nice at finding stuff. So if I go here, what are the top game professional Slack communities? Let's have a look. So not Dungeons and Dragons. That's gaming. Development. There we go. 1600. So Love for Games is one. Play Well Space is another one. Yeah. Also, I'd ask professionals, so anyone you know, like, hey, any communities that you're in that I need to know about. Actually, I think Alexander posted this recently on LinkedIn. He listed like a bunch of game design communities, which are on Discord. So I did mention Slack, but for design and game dev, they tend to be on Discord. So I could ask, what about Discord? And then it should give me a good answer here. Yeah, so I'll just literally, I didn't want to say Google it, but yeah, AI, I guess. There's a lot of good ones out. And also search for Alexander's recent post, just scroll through his post. He did a post about all the different communities out there. Amazing. Alrighty, just gonna have what makes a CV or portfolio stand out for you? So Tiago, the main thing is someone who can articulate their worth. And what I mean by that is if you search like the Google way of showing your worth, it's like, I did X, it was this situation, which meant this for the business, and this is how I solved the problem. So it's essentially using the STAR technique on your experience. So one important thing, if you're looking to get a job and objectively in your previous job, you were as a game engineer, but you were called something else. And then the job you're looking for wants a game engineer, but then you call yourself something confusing, which was the real like job title. But on paper, you were actually doing that. Just write what you actually did. That's another thing people get really hung up on. Like the first impression really matters. So if the headline is like, you were a game developer, amazing. If they gave you some weird title, but you actually just did game development and game design, then just put it in the headline. So like give yourself the biggest layup. We're not lying. We're just saying exactly what we did. And then when you're explaining your responsibilities, you want to compare yourself to either the rest of the team or comparables. So you did X in 3 weeks instead of, 6 weeks. So very succinct kind of professional summary at the top of like why you're amazing. And by why you're amazing, like, what makes you different. Don't talk about what you want. You want to talk about why you're the person for that studio, whether it's your incredibly fast learner or your experience. And then in each experience point, I usually tell like a one-line story, like, what was the job overarching? And then how else do I say it? You want to explain, hopefully in 2 pages here, like for each experience section. Yeah, numbers. You need numbers. Whether it's you saved a certain amount of money by doing something quicker, or you made a feature that was very useful, or you were the top. That's another thing. If you were the top in a certain niche for whatever reason, so you want to use numbers wherever possible and explain like tactically why you are good in each experience. And what I'd say is have a master CV. Actually, rather than get me to suggest this, I've actually done a podcast on this from an actual recruiter who reviewed thousands of interviews. It's called How to Get a Job Playbook. So I'm actually going to send you the link now in the chat. Voila. So if you watch that, she goes into detail about CVs and what makes a great one. And she's hired hundreds of people. So that is the one I would go to. Sweet. So yeah, I'm just going to tag you there. Nice. Boom. So yeah, check that one out. Amazing. Alrighty. So overall, thanks so much. I see a lot of people still here, but I will end it here. But yeah, if you've enjoyed the podcast, let me know. Send me a DM. Let me know what else you want to see in the future. And very shameless plug, subscribe on YouTube. So I've had 5 subscribers since now. So for the 15 people that are still in the chat after 90 minutes, thank you so much. Yeah, consider subscribing. And thank you so much. Alrighty. Have a great week, everyone. And see you later.